is
Yeah.
that Edge as a product um, doesn't necessarily have network effect or need network effect.
Okay.
If you ask myself, if I was the only person in the world using Edge, could I get all of the, and it didn't
Yeah,
change.
that's
Obviously,
true.
if there was only
Yeah.
one person using Edge, we wouldn't have enough revenue to sustain the product, right? But say
Yeah.
that you could somehow still use Edge and be the only person using it, it would still feel like the same product.
Yeah.
You wouldn't lose any value. Unlike a Facebook, if I was the only one using Facebook, it would be a shitty product. There would
You
be
should. Yeah.
no purpose to be a part of it. So network effect is one of those things where if your product needs it, it's hard to get. But then once you
Yeah.
get it, it's hard to lose.
Yeah.
Edge is not a product that needs a network effect. Everyone that uses it and enjoys it can use it and enjoy it as much as if there were a million more people, 2 million, 100 million more people using it, or if nobody was using it. So we don't have the laurels to ride on, which a lot of companies that gain network effect ride on that and get lazy. They're like, hey, everyone's kind of lock in.
Yeah.
It's that lock in mentality. If you're locked in, it's hard to leave because that's where your friends are. That's where the money is. Blah blah blah. And then the product starts to suck, but you're still on it.
Yeah.
You know, think SMS.
Yeah.
Right? It's ubiquitous. It's freaking everywhere. The product
Yeah.
kind of sucks, but that's kind of the de facto standard, and it has not improved. It's just
Yeah.
as shitty as it was 10 years ago. So Edge doesn't have that, and so because of that, we have to keep innovating. We have to keep delivering what people are looking for, what people are wanting, because there's no lock-in.
Yeah.
They can kind of switch if they wanted to. So what have we found? Like, what is the weird bobbing and weaving that we have to do in this very, very volatile industry? Not just price, but user demand. Is definitely assets are probably the single biggest ask and challenge of a
Yeah.
multi-asset application. Everyone and their mother wants some asset you've never heard of
Yeah.
that could become the next Dogecoin that moons out of nowhere, Shiba Inu, or it could just be the thing that no one's ever heard of and just drives down to zero.
Yeah.
And if anything, running a company like Edge almost feels like running a VC firm.
Interesting.
Because if you think about it, every asset you choose to support is an investment of time, money, and energy. You might not be giving money, you might not be sending money outside of the company. You might even be receiving it. You might receive a
Yeah.
grant for supporting that,
Yeah.
but that grant never covers the cost of supporting the
Invest.
asset, especially not over time.
Yeah.
So really, you're deciding. You really put an investor hat on and saying, what are we going to support? Because what do we think are valuable products that contribute to the ecosystem? And what then should we put our time, money, and effort into? And that's, I think, drastically different than most other companies, especially in the general startup space and traditional startups that aren't in crypto. You don't have to put this weird investor hat on and like, hey, what are these different assets that we're going to support? And even to some degree, a lot of, in a way, centralized exchanges don't have to do it to the same degree either, because you don't have the challenge of client-side self-custody technology. When you're a centralized exchange, you could spin up a full node on a computer dedicated to that. Sure, there's some cost in spilling up that node, but there isn't a lot of the technology hurdles in doing client-side transactions, signing transactions, in the code that has to go in there, because that code is never identical to the full node. Right? Every coin needs a full node. Not every
Yeah.
coin has a friendly client-side SDK that you can use to create a self-custody app. And that, and then to maintain that over time. So it is definitely a huge challenge. And that
Yeah.
investor hat is the piece that's, I've never claimed to be, a VC investor. I haven't worked in that space. So that's probably the biggest challenge that I've had is figuring out what do we support. And it's always a mix of what the community also demands, right? The community
Yeah.
demands certain
Yeah.
needs. But then your engineering team has to decide how hard is it, and your support team decide how hard is it to maintain it over time, and the questions they're going to get and the support tickets are going to get. But that's one of the journeys, and that I've realized like it is a piece of the puzzle that is going to be a part of what we do for quite some time.